Cost you £1,000 more to track it. Ballast and rails and everything.
Ladies and gentlemen, can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, can you all shut up for a minute in that case? Lord Lieutenant, Mr. Mayor, members of the Brassey family, and other distinguished guests, welcome to Wirral, and in particular to the home of the most prolific builder of railways that the world has ever seen, Thomas Brassey. My name is David Allen. I'm Vice Chairman of Conservation Areas Wirral and a self-confessed railway nut. The name of Brassey was brought into sharp focus for me when I was in Bucharest, of all places, a couple of years ago, as part of a UK delegation of railway restoration enthusiasts, helping some like-minded folk in Transylvania. Our host took us to see the city's railway museum and then to a working shed where they dragged out their pride and joy, a working, wood-burning steam locomotive. Naturally, we gave this wonderful machine a close inspection. I took a look at the builder's plate that was fixed to the front of the loco's cab, and the wording stunned me. It read, "Canada Works, number 233, 1869, Birkenhead." I had travelled over 2,500 miles to a not very well known country in Eastern Europe to find a locomotive that had been built not 5 miles from where I live. Extraordinary. It must surely be the only Brassey-built locomotive left in the world. Anyway, that's my Brassey story. So before I hand you over to the Mayor of Wirral, Cllr Tony Smith, may I just take this opportunity to thank Peel, who have been very helpful to this project. Not only have they made this location available for erecting the plaque, but they also facilitated an inspection visit to the site a few months ago, and we are very grateful to them for their assistance. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's now my pleasure to introduce you to the Mayor of Wirral. There we are, Cllr Tony Smith, to say a few words, and he will be followed by the Lord Lieutenant.
Thank you very much. First of all, welcome to the Lord Lieutenant and distinguished guests. The story of Thomas Brassey is a remarkable one in every way. He was born the farmer's son near Chester, and after schooling he was apprenticed to a land agent and surveyor in Birkenhead, and spent time assisting Thomas Telford with the surveying of the road from Shrewsbury to Holyhead. As time went on, Thomas opened up a brick and lime works in Birkenhead. Sorry about this. And it took over the manager's job at the Staunton Quarries. There he met George Stephenson, who encouraged him to go into railway building. Brassey was so successful, and such was the reputation that he quickly attained, that in only a few years he had railway building contracts on hand around the country, from the south of England to Scotland. During the 1830s, he built 1/3 of the railways in this country. After spending an 8-year period in France during the 1840s, during which he built 3/4 of the French railway system operating at that time, he returned to Birkenhead, teamed up with Sir Morton Peto and Edward Betts, and opened up the Canada Works behind me. His first contract was to construct the 540-mile Grand Trunk Railway in Canada, which included a 2-mile bridge across the St. Lawrence River. The Robert Stephenson's designed bridge was manufactured at the Canada Works like a giant Meccano kit, taken over to Canada and erected on site. Railway building contracts followed on in India, Australia, Austria, Poland, Russia, Denmark, in fact in nearly every country in the world. An unbelievable 1 in 20 miles of the world's railways was constructed under Brassey's management. At his peak, Brassey was paymaster, and I think this is quite interesting, for 85,000 workers, mostly navvies, and included 1,600 workers here at the Canada Works. And that was a time of Birkenhead's history of full employment. He built local projects including the Chester and Shrewsbury Station, the Runcorn Viaduct, the Seffen Moor Viaduct near Llangollen. Other than railways, he built the Birkenhead Docks, Barrow Docks, Victoria Docks in London, the Callao Docks in Peru, and even water supply and sewage treatment plants in Rio de Janeiro and Calcutta. Sewers in London for Joseph Bazalgette, and a massive Thames embankment. As you can see, the list is endless. Thomas Brassey is an unsung hero and deserves to be officially recognised. I would like to think that with the unveiling of a blue plaque for him today, many more people will be familiar with his achievements and consider him to be one of Birkenhead's great heroes. Thank you. I would now like to invite the Lord Lieutenant to say a few words and perform the unveiling.
Thank you, Tony. That's great. This is the sort of occasion where you really need to have 3 hands. I'll do my best. First of all, it's really an honour to be here today and to see some familiar faces. And this is such a worthwhile thing to have achieved, to get a memorial to such an important person who is not performed up until now, has not been perhaps fully recognised. You've heard already about Thomas Brassey's extraordinary railway adventures and his time at the Canada Works, but I've been briefed on one aspect of his life which is seldom mentioned. Brassey was involved in the Crimean War, and in 1854 a report appeared in the London Gazette about the conditions of the 30,000 British troops which they had to endure at the siege of Sevastopol, and the country was horrified with the stories that came back from there. That period of history conjures up such things as the charge of the Light Brigade and the names of people like Florence Nightingale, who set up hospitals to nurse the sick and wounded. But there's an equally important part of this story that the history books seldom recall. The British Army and their French allies would have been defeated but for the organising ability of Thomas Brassey, his engineers and navvies, and the facilities of the Canada Works here in Birkenhead. On the 30th of November 1854, Sir Morton Peto, MP, Brassey's partner, told the government that their company could overcome the supply problems by building a 40-mile railway from Balaclava to all parts of the front at Sevastopol. They would also do it at no profit to themselves from patriotic motives. At that time, troops in Sevastopol were fighting the Russians in wretched conditions, with thin clothing, few tents, and no fuel. Supplies could not be moved due to the atrocious winter road conditions. Some 8,000 men were in hospital. But within 7 days of the approval to go ahead, Brassey had chartered 9 ships, including the clipper Wildfire, and started loading railway lines of equipment from the West Float Birkenhead. Everything that was needed to build the railway was taken, as well as prefabricated wood huts with stoves for 500 navvies, coal, horses, supplies, and of course doctors and nurses. The fleet arrived early February 1855, The huts were erected and the navvies worked day and night on the railroad. In only 6 weeks, 40 miles of railway, including bridges, cuttings and embankments, was completed. Quite unbelievable, isn't it? With 17 trucks moving the desperately needed supplies to the front, by the end of March, 1,000 tons of shot and shell were transported, and 3,600 tons of clothing, blankets, medical supplies, and of course food. It's a shame there are no photographs, isn't it? It would have been a wonderful sight. In September 1855, Sebastopol fell. The British Army and their French allies were victorious, and the rest, as they say, is history. Such was the power and the skills of Thomas Brassey and his men. They became national heroes, and much praise was heaped upon the Birkenhead Company when they returned home. Many thousands of local people turned out to welcome them. This example of civil engineers operating in a war zone with outstanding success prompted the formation in this country of what is now called the British Army's Royal Engineer Corps. I take my hat off to such a great man. I can't actually take it off, but I figuratively take it off. And I'm delighted to unveil this blue plaque as a commemoration to his memory and achievements. So now I will unveil the plaque. Thank you very much. Thank you. That's brilliant.
Yeah, cool. There Super. Right.
Hello.
Right, now where are you?